Sometimes God doesn't test you to see what you'll do, but to show you who you already are. Let that truth settle in for a moment. Chosen one, if you're hearing this now, it's not a coincidence, it's confirmation. You've been led here for a reason, in this exact moment, because heaven has a message for you. This isn't random, this is divine timing. And if your spirit has been wrestling lately, if you felt like life has been unusually hard for no reason, you're about to find out why. God didn't forget you, He was refining you. You've been walking through a hidden trial, haven't you? A test so intense that no one around you could truly understand. You cried in silence, trusted in the dark, and stood tall even when it felt like the ground beneath you was crumbling. You didn't cheat. You didn't cut corners. You didn't sell your soul for comfort. And God saw everything. The pain, the integrity, the obedience when no one else was watching. You didn't just survive the test. You passed it with honor. If you've been holding it all together while feeling like everything is falling apart, then this message is for you. You've passed the hardest test, not with pride, but with quiet perseverance. You were never being punished, you were being prepared, and now the reward is coming. Before we dive into the deeper truth behind your test and what God is about to reveal to you, I want to ask you to comment 777 below. That number is more than a sign of completion. It's a public declaration that you know this season wasn't random, and you're ready to step into what's next. Also, to those of you who've supported this channel through super thanks, I see you, I thank you, and I speak blessings over your generosity. Whether you gave or not, your presence here means the world. Now, let's take a step further into this revelation, because what if the struggle wasn't meant to break you, but to confirm who you really are? What if every loss was actually God protecting your destiny? Let's unpack exactly why your faithfulness in the fire has marked you forever. God's chosen ones. God gave you the hardest test, and you passed without cheating. There are moments in your life, chosen one, when everything around you seems calm, until it isn't. There's no warning siren, no manual to follow, and certainly no teacher standing in front of you saying, "This is a test." Life doesn't operate like a classroom. Instead, it shifts in silence. One morning, you're waking up to the usual, your plans laid out, your faith intact, your heart somewhat steady. But then, suddenly, without any visible sign, the atmosphere shifts. A spiritual storm begins to brew. People who once felt like home vanish without explanation. Opportunities you prayed for crumble. The money runs low. The bills rise like floodwaters. And your prayers? They seem to echo into an empty heaven. Have you ever wondered how everything could fall apart so quickly? Why would God allow this kind of chaos when all you wanted was peace? That's when you realize this was never a punishment. It was the beginning of an exam that no one saw coming. The truth is, no one around you could see the battle raging inside you. To the world, you looked like the strong one. You smiled in conversations while swallowing your cries for help. You kept showing up, at work, at church, for your family, even when your heart was breaking into pieces. What they didn't see were the tear-stained pillows, the lonely nights, the overwhelming silence after every unanswered prayer. They didn't see you silently whispering, "God, why me?" or the times you nearly believed you were forgotten. But even in that deep and unseen suffering, you didn't quit. Something inside you, something sacred, held you upright. It wasn't just inner resilience, it was the voice of God, softly but firmly speaking into your soul. Not yet. Hold on. This is not the end. Just as Jesus stood firm in the wilderness when tempted by the devil for 40 days and nights, Matthew 4:1-11, you were being tested not on your knowledge, but on your endurance. your heart, and your faith. You passed a test that no one even knew you were taking, a test that didn't come with textbooks or study guides, but with pain, loss, and perseverance. And you passed not by cheating, not by escaping, but by staying. By trusting when it made no sense, by standing when you could have easily fallen. Real tests of faith aren't taken in public, they happen in private. Look at Job, a man who lost everything, his wealth, his children, his health. Even his friends believed he had done something wrong, but Job never cursed God. He wrestled, yes. He wept and questioned, but he remained faithful. In the end, God restored him with double what he lost. Job 42:10. Could it be that your suffering too is leading to something greater than you can imagine? Many people have faced silent battles like this. Let's take Tyler Perry as an example. Before becoming a world-renowned filmmaker, he lived in his car and endured years of rejection. But during those times, he never gave up on his vision. He kept writing, kept believing, and eventually his faith turned into a legacy. What if the hardest part of your story is the very foundation of your greatest breakthrough? So ask yourself, what if this wasn't meant to break you but to build you? What if the very silence you feared was God making room for your transformation? This was no ordinary test. It wasn't designed to measure your intellect, your achievements, or how much scripture you could recite by memory. No, this test was divine, sacred in its silence, and fierce in its refining fire. It was the kind of test that stripped everything away, your comfort, your plans, your support system, until all that was left was your core. And it was in that vulnerable place, where so many would have crumbled, that your true identity as one of God's chosen ones was revealed. What most people fail to grasp is that God's exam isn't about how much you know. It's about how much you can carry. It's not about having the right answers, but responding with the right heart when everything around you stops making sense. Can you still speak life when your own feels like it's unraveling? Can you stay honest when no one would notice if you took a shortcut? Can you stand firm when everything within you wants to surrender? The real test happens where no eyes can see, in the unseen places of your life, in the depths of quiet despair, in the loneliness of your private war, like Elijah in 1 Kings 19, who, after calling down fire from heaven, found himself running, weary, and hiding in a cave, convinced he was alone. God reminded him with a gentle whisper that he was never truly abandoned. Just as Elijah was sustained for the journey ahead, you, too, were sustained through something greater than you even knew at the time. The test came without warning, and though it rocked you to your core, it didn't ruin you. Why? Because beneath the fear, fatigue, and confusion, there was a flame inside you that wouldn't be extinguished. You carried something that the world rarely celebrates but heaven highly honors: grit. A quiet, unshakable grit paired with a hidden faith that kept burning, even when it was cold, dark, and lonely. While no one else was watching, you chose not to betray your character. You didn't let bitterness win. You didn't abandon your principles, even though no one would have blamed you if you did. That was how you passed the first part of God's exam, not with noise or applause, but with steady obedience when everything inside you screamed for an escape. And here's what you didn't know then: every tear you cried was seen by heaven. Psalm 56, verse 8, tells us that God records our sorrows, collects every tear in his bottle, and writes each one in his book. Nothing was wasted. Not a single sleepless night or silent prayer went unnoticed. You weren't being broken, you were being built. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared for something that required this level of strength. This was your becoming. And the hardest part? You've already done it. You showed up. You stood your ground when it was easier to run. You kept your spirit soft, your heart open, and your soul aligned, even when life tried to make you cynical. Like a seed in the dark, you didn't know it then, but you were growing roots. And that chosen one is the undeniable evidence of who you are. Not the opinions of others, not the mistakes of your past, but the identity God already confirmed in the heavens before the test ever began. You're ready for more. The exam wasn't meant to break you, it was meant to reveal you. Think about it. What if this was never about survival, but about preparation for the blessing that's coming next? Could it be that the very pain you endured was actually the soil that nurtured your spiritual authority? Even in real life, this truth shows up again and again. Nelson Mandela, before becoming president of South Africa and a global symbol of justice, spent 27 years in prison. During that time, he wasn't being defeated, he was being refined. He later said, "I have walked that long road to freedom. I have discovered that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb." Just like you, Mandela endured the darkness not to be broken, but to be revealed. So now, if the test has revealed your resilience, what might the next chapter reveal about your purpose? There's a kind of silence that doesn't simply fill the air. It penetrates your spirit. You, chosen one, know this silence well. It's the kind that settles in after you've poured your heart out to God, after you've cried until your voice broke, after your soul whispered prayers through tears. And yet, no response, no answer, no shift, not even the faintest whisper from heaven. You weren't asking for much, just a word, a sign, some indication that God was still near. You begged for peace, pleaded for relief, longed for clarity, but the skies stayed sealed. Every door you knocked on remained shut. Every prayer seemed to return void, and the days stretched longer, more hollow, more uncertain. In that silence, the enemy whispered doubts. Was God even listening? Had he turned his face away? That kind of silence is brutal. It doesn't just feel like neglect. It feels like rejection. It feels like abandonment. It tempts your mind to believe that maybe your prayers were wasted. Maybe your trust was naive. Maybe your faith was in vain. But here's a truth that many overlook, one that has been concealed within the depths of your suffering. The silence wasn't God's absence. It was evidence of his focus. Think of it. When a teacher gives an exam, they don't hover over each student giving hints. They step back. They stay silent, not because they've left, but because they're watching closely to see what you've learned, to see what's truly inside of you. God's silence during your storm wasn't distance. It was divine observation. He was watching your character, not your comfort. Would you still believe when nothing changed? Would you keep obeying when you had no idea where he was leading you? Would you trust his heart even when you couldn't trace his hand? And you did. You didn't walk in clarity, you walked in courage. You didn't hear direction, but you still prayed as if you did. You didn't see a clear path forward, but you moved anyway. That's not ordinary faith. That's warrior faith. The kind that walks into the unknown with no evidence but conviction. It is the kind of faith that Hebrews 11:1 describes. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. This faith, your faith, is forged in the fire of divine silence. It's not the kind that needs a crowd or confirmation. It grows in the quiet. It grows in the solitude where your heart speaks louder than your circumstances. Consider the story of Abraham. God promised him a son, and yet decades passed with nothing but silence and impossibility. Still, Abraham believed. Romans 4:20 tells us, "Yet he did not waver through unbelief regarding the promise of God, but was strengthened in his faith and gave glory to God." Like Abraham, your silent season wasn't a delay in punishment. It was a deepening of purpose. In our world today, where everything demands noise and validation, few people have the courage to walk in faith when heaven goes quiet. But you did. And that makes you different. That makes you chosen. Even in real life, this principle plays out. Simone Biles, one of the greatest gymnasts in history, stepped away from competition at the peak of her career, not because she was weak, but because she was tuning out the noise to listen to what really mattered, her well-being and her truth. In her silence, she wasn't losing. She was aligning. She later said, "At the end of the day, we're human too." Her quiet decision spoke louder than any gold medal. And so it is with you. Your silence didn't mean you were losing your faith. It meant you were discovering its depth. What if that silence you feared was actually the place where your authority was born? What if God's quietness was not to confuse you, but to crown you with strength only the faithful can carry? Chosen one, you didn't just survive the silence, you grew in it. And the very storm that came to break you became the ground where your unshakable faith took root. In that sacred silence, when the world seemed to turn its back, and even heaven felt quiet, you were introduced to the real you. Not the version shaped by others' expectations or applause, but the one forged in fire and solitude. You discovered reservoirs of strength you never imagined were within you. When no one showed up to catch you, you learned to stand. When anxiety tried to smother your peace, you learned to breathe through it with trembling courage. You found a way to navigate the unknown, even when the road ahead was hidden by fog. How is it that in the quietest moments, your soul spoke the loudest? In the very eye of your personal storm, you began to see that the silence wasn't a void. It was God's workshop. He wasn't absent. He was working quietly, deliberately, deeply. Like the refiner's fire in Malachi 3:3, He was purifying you, burning away false dependencies, distractions, and illusions. He was stretching your endurance far beyond comfort so that your character could be anchored in truth, not emotion. Can you see it now? How the silence was never a punishment but a preparation? You came to a profound revelation. God's silence does not equal His absence. It doesn't mean He's disappointed in you. It means the test has begun. Heaven wasn't ignoring you. It was observing, waiting, recording. What would you do when the lights went out and your prayers seemed to echo back unanswered? Would you still believe when no sign arrived? This was the proving ground, the part of the path where the chosen are separated from the casual. Like Job, who said, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him." Job 13:15. You stood firm not because you understood, but because you believed anyway. And still, you kept walking, not because you had clarity, not because someone handed you a blueprint, but because a voice deep inside whispered, "Keep going." That quiet trust, that still flame, was part of the test. You didn't pass because you shouted your faith from the rooftops. You passed because, even in the hush of heaven, you didn't let go. You endured, you trusted, and you grew. Famous author and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankle once said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." That's what happened to you. In the unchanging silence, you changed. In the space where answers were scarce and comfort was stripped away, your soul expanded. Isn't it amazing that the moments that felt like the end were actually your awakening? You didn't just survive that season, you were transformed in it, and now the same silence that once felt unbearable has become sacred. It was in that very quiet that God elevated your identity, not as a victim of circumstance, but as a vessel of His glory. There comes a point in every chosen one's journey where the pressure becomes so intense, the weight so crushing, that compromise starts to look like wisdom. When life corners people and hope seems scarce, many will cut corners just to catch a breath. Some will lie to escape the consequences of truth. Others will mask their identity to be liked or fit in. Many will manipulate outcomes, betray friends, or break promises just to gain an inch of success. In a world that rewards results over righteousness, where getting ahead often matters more than how you got there. Integrity is treated as optional, and truth becomes a blurry, negotiable concept. But what if your test wasn't about how far you could go, but how far you would refuse to fall? What if the real exam wasn't whether you could win, but whether you could do so without selling your soul? The pressure to survive, to be seen, to prove your worth is no small thing. Even the most faithful can be tempted to bend their values to ease the pain. Just like Esau in Genesis 25, who traded his birthright for a single meal, many exchanged their future for fleeting relief. But not you. You, God's chosen one, took the harder path. You stood still while others ran. You remained upright while others bowed to pressure. You refused the shortcut that might have brought quicker results but would have left lasting regret. You could have become cold and numb, mirroring the cruelty of those who hurt you. You could have learned how to manipulate like the manipulators, deceive like the deceivers, and abandon like the ones who abandoned you. And still, no one would have blamed you. But you didn't. You chose light in a dark place. You chose to keep your heart open, your conscience clean, your identity intact, even when it cost you everything the world says matters. Time, opportunities, applause, friendships, and even rest. Isn't that what real strength looks like? Not muscles or medals, but the quiet power of refusing to become what hurt you. It takes unimaginable courage to stay gentle in a world that has become sharp and cynical. It takes more strength to resist than to retaliate. Like Joseph in Genesis, betrayed by his brothers, wrongly imprisoned and forgotten, yet he refused bitterness. He never sold his soul to get out of the dungeon, and because of that, God raised him to power not just for his sake, but to save others. Can you feel how your story echoes his? Heaven saw every moment you resisted, every time you turned down the easy path, every time you said no to what would have made life more comfortable but less meaningful. While others applauded instant results, God was taking note of eternal decisions. This wasn't just about enduring hardship, it was about enduring without becoming hard-hearted. Famous civil rights leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "The time is always right to do what is right." He knew the road of truth was rarely paved with comfort. His life, too, was a testament to walking the hard road with integrity. You're in that same lineage of strength. You didn't take the easy exit. You didn't become someone you're not for approval or safety. You chose truth over trend, purpose over popularity. And that is what makes you different. That's why you're chosen. Integrity isn't flashy. It doesn't come with trophies or trending hashtags. It won't always make headlines or earn likes, but it holds weight in heaven. It is the foundation God uses when building something eternal. When you choose character over convenience, you're not just passing a test, you're preparing for divine promotion. Because what's built on lies always crumbles, but what's built on truth will withstand every storm. So now, what are you building? Something that just looks good, or something that will still be standing when the dust settles? You've proven something few ever do. You're not just capable of achieving success, you're capable of the kind of success that doesn't demand your soul in exchange. You've shown the rare strength to pursue victory without losing your values. In a world where many reach the top by sacrificing their peace, you held on to yours. While others silenced their conscience for comfort, you kept yours alive and clear. And that makes heaven smile. Why? Because the kind of success you've chosen is holy. It honors both God and the person He created you to be. Let's be honest, anyone can chase success. Anyone can grind, hustle, and climb. But how many can do it without losing sight of who they are? How many can arrive at the finish line and still look in the mirror without shame? You can. You didn't sell out. You didn't trade truth for applause. You didn't twist yourself into someone else just to be accepted. And that, more than anything, is what sets you apart. That's what confirms you are not ordinary, you are chosen. Remember Daniel in the lion's den? He rose to great power in a corrupt kingdom, but never once did he compromise his faith or identity. Even when threatened with death, he chose prayer over public approval. He refused to bend, and because of that, God shut the mouths of lions and honored him before kings. Doesn't your journey feel a bit like his? Standing for what's right when everyone else bows is not weakness, it's divine strength. You didn't just pass the exam, you passed with distinction. You didn't crawl through trials just to say you made it. You walked through fire and came out purified. You remained authentic when faking it would have made life easier. That kind of resilience isn't taught in school or trained in seminars. It's something God deposited in your spirit long before you knew you'd need it. And now it's revealing its true power. Actor and humanitarian Denzel Washington once said, "Ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. In choosing the hard but honest way, you've progressed farther than many who appear to be ahead. You're not just building a life. You're laying a foundation no storm can destroy. Because you refuse to compromise, your soul stands on rock, not sand. And now look at what's happening. Because you stayed grounded in truth, your life has become unshakable. Your peace, your character, your identity, none of it can be taken away. What you're constructing, whether it's a dream, a family, a mission, or a legacy, it's being built to last. Not because you have all the answers, but because your heart stayed aligned with truth. The reward waiting for you isn't only what's coming next, it's also who you've become. You've grown into someone unbreakable, someone forged in fire but not burned, someone whose spirit is clothed in strength and dignity, like the woman in Proverbs 31:25, who laughs without fear of the future. Can you feel it? The shift in the atmosphere? The evidence of a soul that didn't bend, but blossomed? You are strong, you are pure, you are steadfast, you are chosen. And because of that, your story is only just beginning. Let's not sugarcoat it. You nearly broke. There were moments that brought you to your knees, times when the weight on your chest made it hard to even breathe. The heaviness of it all wasn't just emotional. It drained your body, wore down your spirit, and left your soul echoing with silent cries for relief. Every sunrise didn't feel like hope. It felt like another mountain you weren't sure you had the strength to climb. Did you ever wonder how you were even still standing? Your energy was depleted. Your prayers felt unanswered. You gave everything you had, and still the storm raged on. And the worst part, it felt like you were being punished for doing the right thing. You followed the narrow path, and yet life kept hitting you harder. You stayed honest, kind, patient, while those who cheated, lied, or manipulated seemed to get ahead with ease. Didn't it feel unfair? Didn't it make you ask God, why am I suffering when I'm doing everything right? You weren't alone in those questions. Even David, the man after God's own heart, cried out in Psalm 13:1, "How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" That raw, aching question has passed through the hearts of every chosen one. You looked around and saw others smiling, succeeding, living freely, while you carried pain like a second skin. You wondered if something was wrong with you. You felt left out, overlooked, exhausted. You may have asked, why me? Why now? How much more can I take? But beneath the breaking, something divine was taking place. You weren't being torn apart, you were being opened. God wasn't abandoning you, He was awakening you. The pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation. You were being stretched, pulled beyond the limits of who you were, into the person He created you to become. Could it be that what you thought was your breaking point was really your breakthrough moment? Like the story of Gideon in Judges 6, you may have felt too weak for the fight. He questioned God's calling, saying, "My clan is the weakest, and I am the least in my family." Yet God called him a mighty warrior. Why? Because God saw who he truly was, even when Gideon couldn't. Isn't it possible that this season was God's way of showing you the strength you never knew you had? Pressure creates diamonds, fire refines gold, and trials birth chosen ones. Every wave that tried to drown you was actually washing away your fear. Every closed door was God's way of redirecting you to something greater. And every time you cried alone, heaven was collecting your tears, not as signs of weakness, but as seeds of your becoming. Author Elizabeth Gilbert, best known for her memoir, Eat, Pray, Love, once said, "Ruin is a gift. Ruin is the road to transformation." Her words echo a truth many discover only after the pain. What felt like ruin was the very road God used to reveal your resilience. Your breakdowns became breakthroughs in disguise. So now, take a step back and really see what was happening. God was chiseling away everything that didn't belong, the fear that kept you stuck, the doubt that made you small, the insecurities that whispered you weren't enough. Every hardship was sculpting you into someone unshakable. Every trial was sharpening your spiritual edge. Every tear you cried was watering the soil where your purpose would grow. You weren't just surviving, you were transforming, becoming someone more resilient, more radiant, more real. Your soul was being fortified with steel and laced with light, and as painful as it was, this was the necessary breaking, the kind that builds, not destroys. And what if the breaking wasn't to tear you down, but to let the real you finally rise? You see, what nearly broke you didn't end your story. It started a whole new chapter. The breaking wasn't your downfall, it was your divine awakening. You weren't merely surviving pain, you were being sculpted by it. Every disappointment, every delay, every heartbreak, they weren't random. They were sacred parts of the process that brought you here. You were never just enduring it, you were evolving through it. And though it stung, though you sometimes cried yourself to sleep, questioning if God still saw you, it was necessary. You couldn't reach the mountaintop without first walking through the valley. That's the hidden truth most people overlook. Real growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. True strength isn't born from safety. It's forged in adversity. Like a tree that strengthens its roots by facing the wind, your soul was anchoring itself through every storm you refused to run from. Let me ask you, what if everything that hurt you was also healing you? What if those tears were watering the very soil where your destiny would bloom? This is the holy paradox of chosen ones. Your pain wasn't proof of God's absence, it was evidence of his preparation. Think of Moses, who was exiled to the desert for 40 years before God called him to lead a nation. Or Ruth, who lost everything before finding redemption and becoming part of the lineage of Jesus. The pattern is clear. Those God uses powerfully are often broken deeply. Why? Because brokenness removes what is false. So the truth can finally rise. You've stood face to face with storms and came out stronger. You've stared down the voices of doubt and silenced them with your faith. You've shed layers of who you thought you needed to be. And now what remains is something rare, the real you. Pure, resilient, grounded, unshakable. You've emerged from the fire not burned, but refined. You've passed through the floodwaters and haven't drowned. Isaiah 43:2 reminds us of this promise. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. That verse wasn't just written for ancient times, it was written for you, for this exact moment. What God has pulled out of you through pressure and pain is nothing less than extraordinary. The diamond has been uncovered, the gold has been purified, your soul now glows with a brilliance that can't be dimmed. You've become someone forged by fire, not easily shaken by wind. The world may not fully understand the depth of what you've endured, but heaven knows. And here's what matters most. You know what it took. you know what you lost. And now you know what you've gained. This wasn't just preparation for a season, it was transformation for a lifetime. Steve Harvey, a man of faith and perseverance, once said, "Your setback is just a setup for your comeback." You've lived that truth. Everything that tried to break you has only built you. And now nothing stands in your way. The hardest part is behind you. The foundation beneath you is solid, and the vision before you is divine. You aren't walking into your future wounded. You're walking in as a warrior. You're not starting over. You're stepping into what was always yours, now with the wisdom, humility, and power to carry it. So here's the truth. You are ready. Ready to step boldly into your purpose. Ready to walk with authority into your destiny. Ready to live the life God carved out for you before you were even born. And the most incredible part, you're just getting started. You didn't get a round of applause. No confetti fell from the ceiling. There were no standing ovations the day you forgave someone who never apologized. No one clapped when you chose love over bitterness, or when you kept showing up with a quiet spirit while your heart was breaking behind the scenes. The world missed those moments, the moments that mattered most. You didn't receive an award for walking away from drama, for choosing peace over revenge, or for carrying burdens that no one else could see. There were no Instagram posts celebrating your private victories. No one broadcast the nights you cried, but still prayed. But just because people didn't notice doesn't mean heaven wasn't watching. While the world was busy measuring success by status, God was measuring the strength of your soul. He was watching the hidden choices, the ones no one else ever saw. You didn't need a stage, you didn't need a spotlight, because God was grading you on a different scale, not by appearance, not by performance, but by perseverance, by the quiet, holy decisions that shaped your spirit. Like when you responded to insult with grace, when you chose to heal instead of harbor hate, when you kept walking forward with trembling faith when quitting would have felt so much easier. Do you realize how rare that kind of strength is? The world rewards visibility, but heaven honors integrity. Consider the story of the widow in Luke 21:1-4. Jesus watched as wealthy people gave large offerings at the temple, but then came a poor widow who gave 2 small coins, all she had. She was unnoticed by the crowd, but seen by God. Jesus said she gave more than all the others. Why? Because heaven doesn't grade based on quantity. It grades based on sacrifice. That's what your journey has been about. The hidden tests, the silent triumphs. And while no one handed you a trophy, the applause of heaven was already resounding. God saw every unseen struggle, every prayer whispered through tears. Every time you laid your pride down and chose faith over fear. Every time you walked in obedience, even when the reward seemed invisible. And that's when the real promotion began. Not the kind that flashes with status or wealth, but the kind no man can take away. Divine elevation. You weren't promoted on paper, you were promoted in spirit. And when God promotes you, no force on earth can reverse it. Have you started to notice it? How the atmosphere around you is shifting. How closed doors are cracking open. How the things you used to chase are now finding their way to you. That's not luck. That's a reward. That's a spiritual graduation into your next level. Peace is returning. Not a shallow peace based on perfect circumstances, but a deep, unshakable peace. A knowing in your spirit that you are right where God wants you to be. The noise of the world is finally fading. The clamor of needing to be seen, liked, validated, it's losing its grip. And in that sacred silence, you found what many never will, your true purpose. The assignment that was written into your soul before you were born. The mission heaven always intended for you to fulfill. And now that purpose is louder than the pain, clearer than the chaos. It's leading you forward like a compass made of fire and faith. Entrepreneur and philanthropist Tyler Perry once said, "Sometimes your blessings are in the breaking. Sometimes your promotion comes after your patience. And you, chosen one, have lived that truth. You didn't rush the process. You didn't need man's recognition, because now you carry something far more valuable, the evidence of heaven's approval. So here's the question: can you feel the shift? Can you sense that the next chapter has already begun? Because it has. And it's being written in bold, holy ink by the hand of God himself. God always honors faithfulness, especially the kind that blossoms in silence. He has seen you. Every tear you cried when no one was around. Every whispered prayer that felt like it barely reached the ceiling. Every time you chose to keep going, even when the path ahead was unclear and the weight was too much. You may have thought no one noticed, but heaven noticed. God noticed, and he was never measuring your progress by applause, but by the condition of your heart. He saw the nights you stayed obedient even when the breakthrough didn't come. He saw the moments you chose righteousness over revenge, peace over pride, humility over recognition, and he counted it all, not for your punishment, but for your promotion. Can you believe that your private pain was building a public purpose? Because here's the truth: the real reward isn't found in people praising your efforts. It's found in the blessing of knowing heaven has been backing you all along. Your loyalty, your faith, your inner strength. Those are the things God uses to elevate his chosen ones. That's what sets you apart. That's what places you in position for things beyond your imagination. Do you remember the story of Hannah in 1 Samuel 1? She wept silently in the temple, begging God for a child, while others misunderstood her pain. No one saw the depth of her sorrow, but God did. And in time, not only did he bless her with a son, Samuel, he gave her one of the greatest prophets Israel would ever know. Her silent cries became the foundation of something extraordinary. Isn't your story unfolding the same way? You didn't get the worldly applause. You didn't hear loud cheers when you made the hard choices in secret. But what you didn't hear in the natural was thundering in the spiritual. Heaven was on its feet. Angels were standing at attention. Your silent yes echoed through eternity. And now, you've crossed into a new dimension. Doors are beginning to open, not because you forced them, but because you passed the test of obedience and endurance. A peace is entering your life, not the kind the world gives, but the kind Jesus promised in John 14:27, when he said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives." That peace is a sign you're aligned with divine timing. Purpose is awakening inside you now, louder, clearer, bolder than ever before. You can feel it, can't you? That stirring within your spirit, that confirmation that everything you went through had a reason. You weren't just being tested, you were being transformed. And here's the most powerful part: God never forgets faithfulness in silence. While others may have overlooked you, heaven has never taken its eyes off you. And now, promotion is no longer a possibility. It's your reality. You're being lifted from within. You're being elevated in ways that will soon become visible to everyone who once doubted you. Can you see the fruit forming? Can you feel the shift? Because this is no longer preparation. This is the beginning of the promise, and you're walking into it with nothing missing, nothing broken, just pure, holy strength. You are being promoted not just in position, but in purpose, and the world is about to witness what heaven has long affirmed. You've carried this quiet question for years. Why do I feel so different? Why do I never seem to fit in, no matter how much I try? You've watched others find their path, form connections, and seemingly move forward while you remain stuck in a fog of uncertainty. The loneliness was not just emotional, it was spiritual. It felt like you were walking a path no one else could understand, and honestly, most days, it hurt. But something deep inside whispered that your journey was different, and that whisper was right, because the chosen are always separated before they are elevated. You see, the path of the chosen is never crowded. It's not paved with popularity or ease. It's carved through seasons of isolation. But here's the truth most people miss. You weren't isolated because you were being punished. You were being prepared, set apart not for rejection, but for purpose. God pulled you away from the noise of the crowd so you could hear his voice clearly. Moses knew this path. Before he became the deliverer of Israel, he spent 40 years in the wilderness, alone, unknown, and misunderstood. But it was in that hidden place that God revealed himself through a burning bush and changed the course of history. Do you see the pattern? Separation always precedes revelation. You may have felt abandoned, forgotten, even invisible, but in that solitude, you began to meet the most important person you could ever know, your true self. Without the distractions, without the pressure to perform, your vision started to sharpen. Your identity became clearer. That quiet room you once despised became sacred ground. It wasn't isolation, it was divine incubation. So let me ask you, could it be that the people who walked away were actually making room for what God wanted to do through you? You had to learn to stand without applause, to believe without confirmation, to speak truth even when your voice trembled. You had to face your fears without leaning on someone else's courage. You had to walk through valleys where no one could guide you but God. And that walk, though silent and often unseen, was forming you. This wasn't a season of loneliness. It was a season of refining. Like iron in the fire, you were being forged into someone the world would soon need. Before a leader is given the crowd, they must first be faithful in the wilderness. Like David tending sheep in fields no one cared about, you were learning obedience, humility, and trust. And just like David, your time to lead will come. But first, you had to walk alone. Best-selling author Brené Brown once said, "You can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you cannot choose both." You chose courage. You chose to face the silence, to search your soul, and to let God shape you away from the spotlight. That choice, the hard one, the holy one, is why you're now ready to rise. You were never truly alone. You were hidden, protected, prepared. In that quiet space, your voice was being purified, not shaped by opinions, but by truth. You were being taught to listen to your own heart before giving it to the needs of others. Because a chosen one cannot lead others until they first know how to lead themselves. And now, the season of separation is turning into one of activation. What was once a wilderness is about to become your launch pad. It's always in the silence that the deepest truths are revealed. In the stillness, where no praise echoed, where no one validated your steps, you discovered something priceless. You found your purpose. You unearthed a strength that didn't come from crowds or applause, but from communion with God. And in that sacred solitude, something awakened in you, a vision that was never meant to be seen by the world until it was ready to shine through you. You were never truly alone. What you called isolation, heaven called preparation. While others were rushing ahead, you were being rooted. While the world measured progress in noise, God was measuring it in stillness. And now, you carry something most people miss: wisdom earned in secret. In that private place, you gained more than answers. You gained clarity, courage, and spiritual authority. You learned how to lead, not from a place of emptiness, but from the overflow of a soul filled with truth. You no longer look outward for validation. You no longer wait for others to approve what God already confirmed in your spirit. Can you see how far you've come? You are now defined not by applause, but by vision. Like Nehemiah, who rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem while ignoring the voices of distraction, you've learned to stay focused. Nehemiah didn't need consensus, he needed conviction. And so do you. Because it's vision, not validation, that will carry you to the heights you were born to reach. It may have felt like you were falling behind, like life was passing you by while you stood still, but that wasn't delay. It was divine refinement. Every moment you spent in the background wasn't wasted. You were building spiritual muscle. You were deepening your well. You were aligning with your identity, so when your moment came, you wouldn't crumble under the weight of the calling. And now, the moment is here. The spotlight you once feared is about to find you, not because you chased it, but because you've been prepared for it. The silence you endured is giving way to sound, the sound of doors opening, of hearts awakening to your voice, of destinies aligning with your influence. Like Esther, who spent a season hidden in the palace before stepping into her assignment to save a nation, you've been positioned for impact. And now God is saying, you were born for such a time as this. Esther 4:14. You were never meant to follow the crowd. You were meant to walk alone for a while, so when the crowd finally follows you, they'll follow authenticity, not performance, not charisma, but truth. You are not the same person who entered the valley. You're stronger, sharper, spiritually anchored, and because you endured, because you remained faithful in the quiet seasons, you are now ready to lead. This is your season of emergence. The time of hiding has passed. The time of impact has begun. So now, chosen one, stand tall, step forward, speak boldly, lead with vision. You don't need anyone's permission. God has already appointed you. You were hidden for a reason, and now you will be revealed for a purpose. And this time, they won't just hear your voice, they'll follow it. You've passed the exam, not just barely, but with grace, perseverance, and a quiet strength that no storm could take from you. You endured what would have crushed many. You stood through emotional hurricanes, spiritual warfare, and soul-deep wounds that tried to silence your purpose and steal your identity. You walked through nights that nearly shattered your faith, but you never folded. You never sold your truth to escape the test. You didn't let the pain rewrite your worth. And now, you are more than a survivor. You are a guide. You carry more than scars. You carry wisdom. You hold more than memories. You hold messages. What you went through was never just for you. Every silent night, every whispered prayer, every moment you stayed faithful when quitting would have been easier, none of it was wasted. Why? Because God never wastes pain. Look at the life of Joseph in Genesis, betrayed by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and left in prison. But when he rose to power in Egypt, do you remember what he said to his brothers? You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive. Genesis 50:20. Joseph's pain became a pathway for deliverance, and so has yours. That lonely road you walked in the dark, it's now a map for someone else's escape. That voice you found while the world was silent, it's now a torchlight for those still trapped in the shadows. The wisdom born from your wounds has become someone else's answer. The very fire that tried to consume you has now lit a lamp within you, and that lamp is meant to guide others home. You know what it feels like to question your worth, to feel invisible, forgotten, overlooked. You remember what it's like to walk into a room and feel like you don't belong, to smile while silently screaming. And because you've lived it, not read about it, you now have the gift of recognition. You can see what others miss. You can discern the hidden pain in someone's eyes. You can spot the silent battles behind the strongest facades. That's why you're being called to teach, lead, and lift. Not from a place of superiority, but from deep empathy. You're not just sharing answers, you're sharing lived experience. You won't preach from theory, but from transformation. That makes you dangerous to darkness. That makes you a healer to the hurting. You were once the one reaching out in the dark. Now you're the one holding the light. You were once asking, God, why me? Now you're declaring, God, use me. Famous author and speaker Youve and Doesnt, who rose from brokenness to become a global voice of healing, once said, your mess is your ministry. And she's right. What you thought was just suffering was actually shaping. It's now your sacred assignment. So here's the question: are you ready to teach? Not by lecture, but by living testimony, because someone out there is praying for a sign. Someone is walking the path you once crawled through. And your voice, your journey, your scars, they are the evidence that survival is possible, that healing is real, that faith still works. You are no longer in the test, you are now the teacher. And this next chapter of your life, it isn't about enduring anymore, it's about empowering. Speak life, not from a pulpit, not from a stage, but from the very core of who you are. You don't need a microphone to preach. Your life is the sermon, the way you carry yourself, the way you love, the way you show up with compassion. That's your ministry. Encourage the discouraged. Remind the weary of who they truly are. Tell the broken-hearted that they're not too far gone. Tell the overlooked that they're not forgotten. Tell the hopeless that their story isn't over, because you were once in their shoes. And now you are the voice you once needed to hear. Don't be afraid to share your story, especially the parts that still sting. Those unhealed moments, those scars you still carry, they're not a sign of weakness. They're proof that healing is possible. People don't need polished perfection. They need truth. They need real. When you speak from the heart, walls crumble. When you tell the truth of what God brought you through, you give others permission to believe that freedom is possible for them too. Remember the woman at the well in John 4. One encounter with Jesus changed her entire identity. She went from shame to strength in one conversation, and what did she do? She ran back to her town and told everyone, "Come see a man who told me everything I ever did." She didn't wait until she was perfect. She spoke while the water was still dripping from her jar. So, speak now. Don't wait until you feel ready. You already are. Lift others as you climb. True greatness doesn't hoard glory. It multiplies it. As God raises you, stay rooted in humility. Don't forget the wilderness that formed you once you reach the mountain, because the same hand that lifted you is calling you to now lift someone else. You lose nothing by helping others win. In fact, you multiply your impact when you pour into those who are still in the valley you once called home. You're no longer just being tested. Now you're trusted. God doesn't assign mission to the unrefined. He gives the hardest exams to the strongest students, not to crush them, but to build them into vessels he can use. And now, after everything you've endured, after the storms you've survived, and the soul you've surrendered, heaven sees you not just as a student, but as a leader, a voice, a light in the darkness. You've been found faithful, and because of that, you've been found ready. You're not the same person who entered the test. You're wiser, sharper, softer in love, stronger in spirit. You're no longer just surviving. You're carrying the mantle. God is handing you your next assignment: to lead, to love, to teach, and to transform. Not just through your words, but through the example of your life. And now, the world is waiting. There are people assigned to your voice, hearts assigned to your healing, lives that will only shift when you begin to speak. Your presence will break chains. Your words will water dry souls. Your obedience will open doors for generations after you, because you didn't just pass the test. You became the teacher. And heaven is now saying, you are released. You are ready. You are chosen. Now go. As you look back on the journey you've walked, remember this: God entrusted you with the hardest test because he knew you had the strength, resilience, and heart to conquer it. It wasn't about the struggle or the pain you endured. It was about your perseverance, your unshakable faith, and the way you refused to compromise your integrity when faced with the most challenging moments. You didn't take shortcuts. You didn't cheat. You stayed true to yourself and to the God who has always been with you, even in the hardest times. And because of that, you didn't just survive, you thrived. God has tested you, not to harm you, but to refine you, to prepare you for the great purpose He has set before you. The trials you've faced are not your end, but a stepping stone to the abundant future God has planned for you. You've been chosen for something far greater than what you see right now, and the strength you've gained through your struggles will carry you into that destiny. Now is the time to celebrate the victory you've already won. Your journey, though difficult, has prepared you to lead, to inspire, and to fulfill your divine calling. You are not defined by your struggles. You are defined by how you overcame them with God's strength. If this message has touched your heart, we invite you to consider supporting this ministry through super thanks. Your contributions, no matter how big or small, allow us to continue spreading the light of God's truth and encouragement to those who need it most. We want to take this moment to thank you, whether you choose to donate or not. Your presence, your support, and your prayers mean more than words can express. As we continue to walk this path together, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who may be encouraged by it, and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting messages. Your comments are always welcome. We would love to hear how God has been working in your life and how this message has inspired you. May God bless you abundantly in every area of your life. May He guide your every step, strengthen your spirit, and continue to reveal His divine purpose for you. Know this: you are chosen, you are loved, and your best days are ahead of you. Keep trusting, keep moving forward, and never forget, you are chosen.